Hi, this is Dan and Lexi from Dan Schultz Outdoors, reminding you, keep the adventures alive.
Hey y'all, I'm Johnny.
And I'm Colleen. And we're the Keel Quest. And we want you to keep the adventures alive. Cheers!
Hey, this is Darren from My Paddle Repeat, encouraging you to keep the adventures alive.
This is David from Beachley Ironworks saying keep the adventures alive.
Alive.
Hi, I'm Kevin Collin, the Happy Camper. Remember, keep the adventures alive. Awesome!
Woo, buddy! Shug here! Keep the adventures alive. I am.
Ethan here, the avid outdoorsy guy, reminding you to keep the adventures alive.
We're John and Aaron.
Keep the adventures alive.
Hey everyone, it's Kylan from Lure of the North, and I encourage you to keep the adventures alive.
This is Sky North telling you, keep the adventures alive. And now on with the show.
Hey, well, happy New Year's to everybody, and welcome back to another adventure show with Canoehound. We're gearing up for a great 2021, I hope. Hope everybody had a great holiday season. I hope everybody stayed healthy, happy, and, trying to beat all this COVID stuff, but we're not going to mention that stuff anymore tonight because we all hate it. Anyways, I'm your host, Dennis, also known as Canoehound, and Canoehound's Outdoor Adventure Show is a show that is geared towards bringing you a lot closer to the great outdoors by bringing you hot topics and the guests that you enjoy and watch on YouTube and throughout that whole outdoor community. Let's see here. We're live here every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's the way it's always going to be, I hope. Anyways, if you haven't already done so, please do hit that subscribe button. And if you are new to the channel, thank you very much for tuning in tonight. Hopefully you'll find this to be a great show and you'll tune in with us every Tuesday evening. Let's see here. Man, you know what? I got off to a wrong start here with this whole thing here. I got off script, and that's always a horrible thing, but that's okay. Let's get right back on it. I want to send out a huge thank you to all our channel supporters. We've had many new channel members pop on over the holiday season. Thank you very much. You've seen a lot of them, hopefully, in the introduction here to the video tonight. Everybody's saying keep the adventures alive, and a lot of them were past guests as well. So thanks very much to you guys who help keep this channel ticking. It's greatly appreciated. I also like to thank a few of my business supporters, people that we affiliate ourselves with. One that I start out with every week because I have to have my coffee during the show. It's the good friends over at Backcountry Coffee Company. They supply Canoehound's Outdoor Adventure Show with our coffee. Cheers to you guys. Thank you. and it's always hot, and I'm drinking out of a tin cup, and I always burn my lip. Okay. Next, we have Kid Products. They're our good friends. You know, I boast about these guys quite often. They are the makers of the Kid Twig Stove. And something that they just come out with, I think they launched it this week, and I've already picked mine up, and that would be the Kid Reflector Oven. If you haven't heard anything about this, check them out at kihdproducts.com, and check out their reflector oven. It's really cool. I picked mine up, had the opportunity to use it on a canoe trip this summer with a couple of friends, and we made like cinnamon rolls in there, cornbread, and pizzas. So these things work pretty awesome. If you've never used one, give one a try. They're pretty awesome. Also, Great Signs and Graphics for doing all our printing and stuff like that. We talk about them quite often. And of course, our friends over at Short Hills Beard Company for keeping this scruff on my face looking pretty good with their beard oils and beard balms. So thank you very much, guys. And yeah, that's all good stuff. That's all the thank yous out of the way. Just wanted to mention that over Christmas, we were selling a lot of our Canoehound Adventures iron-on decals and patches. That would be these guys. And we still do have a handful of these left, or a good handful anyways. They're $6 a piece or 2 for $10. And if you order 2 for $10, I'll also throw in a Canoehound Adventures and Canoehound Adventures or Canoehound's Outdoor Adventure Show decal pack, all for $10, including mailing and tax. So there's not a lot of profit to be made there, but it just helps support the channel and get you some swag very cost effectively. Let's see here. We've got, not a lot of intros tonight. 2 more things. If you have any hot topics for upcoming shows or any guests that you'd like to see on the show, please do drop me an email at canoehound@gmail.com. I'll see what I can do to make that happen. We have a lot of interesting shows that we're working in the near future on trying to bring you. We're just trying to tighten up a few, or tie up a few loose ends. And once that happens, we'll get everything posted on our Facebook page. So if you haven't already subscribed to Canoehound Adventures, make sure you do that. But also get over and check out Canoehound's Outdoor Adventure Show on Facebook, and we will be posting all the updates on there as to what's coming up with shows, show announcements, things of that sort. And just keeps things all trudging along. They all work together, right? And one last thing. As you know, our shows are very interactive. If you're new to the show, this is a very interactive show. So we welcome your questions. And if you have a question for our guests, all I ask is that in the chat over here that you put the word question in capital letters before your question so I can see it. Makes it easier for me to identify. I'm a one-man show here, so I'm trying to maintain the chat and the interview and trying to keep all the things going here all smoothly. So I do miss the questions. If they do get by me, I apologize. But if you want to make sure your question is heard or read or answered, after the 8 o'clock hour, when we do our swag giveaway, you'll have the opportunity. I'll drop the link in, and you'll have the opportunity to join us right here on panel, and you can ask your question of our guest or myself and actually get a face-to-face, virtually face-to-face answer from our guest. Don't be shy. It's very easy. StreamYard is very easy to set up so that if you want to come up, please do. We welcome everybody. The only thing I ask is that you limit it to one question and maybe a quick, brief follow-up, but no long stories, because we want to try and get everybody up and asking their questions throughout the show. So enough of me blabbing on. Here we are. Tonight we have a fantastic guest on slate. Tonight's guest is one of Canada's true explorers. He's also known as perhaps one of the most iconic Canadian paddlers, and his canoe route books have been a Bible of sorts to many a paddler. For the past 30 years, he's been a true inspiration to me as a canoeist, but I can't even count how many of his routes I've actually done, stuff that he's actually documented. So there's quite a few, but I can honestly say that I've worn out. I'm on my 3rd copy now of his Temagami canoe routes book, just because I've done so many of the Temagami area canoe routes. What can I say? Anyways, please welcome to the show tonight, Mr. Hap Wilson. Hap, how are you tonight?
Hey, yeah, I'm still upright and happy to be. And thanks, Dennis, for inviting me on the show. I know you've been asking me for a long time, and the thing with Andrea and I, we're really busy doing stuff, and sometimes the schedule just doesn't work out. But glad to be here, and thanks for all the people who tuned in.
Yeah, you know what? Like, I realize things are busy, and anytime I try to get a guest on the show, I try to throw a few dates at them and stuff like that because it has to work with your schedule as well. And I know you guys are busy, especially with Cabin Falls. Summertime, you guys are pretty much 100% devoted to that, right?
Yeah, it takes up, I'd say, about half of our time. We're up there for, usually from, break up to freeze up. We took the last plane last year. We took the last plane out in October, and and that's that's a good 5-month stint. It's a real tough place to hang out. I'm sure people understand that. It's a bit of paradise, and something it's really hard for us to leave. Actually, I'm just joking, but we're certainly grateful and appreciative that we do have that place up in Temagami.
Sure. Is that how you primarily get back in and out to Cabin Falls? Like, I know you guys paddle in quite often, but is that fly in is your transportation in and out usually?
Well, it is for most of the guests fly in and fly out, but we've had over the last couple of years, we've had a lot of people paddle in the middle of their, and stop at the lodge, halfway through their trip, take 2 or 3 days breather, hike the trails, swim in the pools, and enjoy a soft bed and and a gourmet meal, and that's for ourselves, we do paddle in as much as we can because the expense of the float plane service is not cheap, and plus we try to reduce the the footprint as much as we can for the lodge. So, and that commute for us is it's a 30 plus kilometer paddle with 14 portages and rapids, from where we park, to get down to the lodge. Supplies all come in by aircraft and have to be paddled and portaged the 2.5 kilometers down to the lodge. A lot of work, and it's a labor of love. And the people that we get up there, we really appreciate seeing what they see through their eyes, and just the unbelievable expressions when they see the beauty of Temagami. A lot of people come up for the first time, never been in Temagami, and of course that's we're in the central part in one of the more beautiful places on Lady Evelyn system. With all the waterfalls and the canyons, and certainly the hallmark ancient pine forests where our trails run. Certainly a treat. We certainly introduce people to the importance of preservation, and and we hint on a lot of the politics involved in forestry and that, because people have those questions. First Nations always big on the agenda for discussions, and the appreciation that that we are treading on their traditional lands as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like I've seen many of your video snippets, of whether it be on Instagram or Facebook, or I think even on YouTube. You got you and Andrea paddling like tandem canoes, sort of rigged up like a pontoon boat, and running supplies down. Hey, that's it's got to be a lot of work. Yeah.
Well, it's the canoe as a utilitarian vessel. It's canoes were historically used as in the supply chain, the fur trade. So it's not a lot different from historic days when they used to have these monumental loads and portages, and we don't have any other choice but to take advantage of the high water to raft materials and supplies down for the season. And there's always maintenance on old buildings. This first cabin the original cabin was built in 1931. That's it's almost a century old. And when I first came across it back in 1970, it was ready to fall. The roof was leaking. It was pretty much ready to collapse back into nature at that time. So, I was lucky to have met the third owner at that time, and he wanted a Canadian steward to look after that cabin, and I was a park ranger at soon after that time, and government wanted to expropriate the property, and at that time, even now, paddlers in need of emergency shelter, can use we always leave at least one cabin open and supplies for for emergency use. And the government's, saw the importance of having that as a bit of a sanctuary. And, for us, it is our primary sanctuary for ourselves, our family, and the guests that come up. And they, and that's, again, that's, as you mentioned, that it's a lot of work to maintain that place. And, but we love what we do, and it pays off incredibly through the people that share the experiences with us there.
Mm-hmm. And how fitting that it's fallen into the hands of somebody that actually has such a true passion for the area, such as yourself, right?
Well, it's funny, we get into discussions, why should we have a private property in the middle of a wilderness park? And the park was built around, this private property, back in, it was originally a waterway park in the mid 1970s. And I actually worked on the park plans for the wilderness park when I was a ranger cartographer there. And the idea of owning a private property in the park, it sort of humbles us, and we certainly don't take it for granted that we do own the place. It could have gone into other hands. It could have been developed as a fly-in helicopter resort type extravaganza, where fishing and you'd see jet skis going up and down the river. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but Andrea's done a remarkable job at camouflaging the by choice of paint colors and what have you, trying to blend the buildings into the natural environment. And paddlers have gone by who have never been down the river, and the portage is on the opposite side, and they say, well, we never realized there was a lodge there. Mm-hmm. It's fairly well concealed.
No, that's a great job. How big is Cabin Falls? Like I've seen various pictures here and there, and some YouTube videos, various people that have basically planned a trip or planned a visit to your cabin, within their trip down to Lady Evelyn, right?
I'm just grabbing. This is the journal that I inherited when I took over the cabin, and it was kept by the original owner in 1931, and it has old photographs and notations, journal notes from about 4 years use back then. That's the original cabin. We've rebuilt it and refurbished it. Certainly a lot of work had to go into, replacing sill logs and chinking oakum, new roof put on, a couple of new windows, that kind of thing. And almost 2 decades ago, I started the idea of building a larger place. When I had kids, I wanted a larger place to keep the family, and started running trips up there as early as 1984, actually. And we used to cram 6 to 8 people in the old cabin. It got a little bit tight there when you had to cook meals, and and I usually slept in the tent or on the floor, and I was preparing meals for 6 to 8 people. It was you can imagine trying to keep things organized, and just the aroma from damp clothing and food and everything else in there. So we expanded it to a couple of other buildings. We have 2 sleep cabins now, and you can go to our site at cabinfalls.ca and take a look at what we've done up there.
Yeah, by all means, everybody check that out for sure. I got a couple of questions I see in the chat here already, Hap. I don't really want to take. I know you've had a lot of brought a lot of political awareness to Temagami and old growth forests, and you really fighting as an activist for many great causes. And I don't want to take the show in that direction unless you'd like to. It's up to you. But I'd like to get to know the Hap Wilson beyond that, right? But
I promised not to get political. I got kicked out of 2 American shows. Right? This is I've spent more time watching American news in the past 4 years than Canadian news. But my sister sent this up from Arizona. Anybody wearing a mask, she says, down there gets threatened, and everybody's carrying guns down there. Anyway, she took her life in her hands to get this hat for me. But I promised not to get
Make America great
political discussions tonight.
Right. Well, I'm going to pop this question up here from Donald Dakota asking, what can be done to stop the logging of Solus wildlands and protect it along with the rest of Greater Temagami region? And thanks, Hap, for sharing all you do.
Yeah, it's a tough question about logging, period. Anywhere from Algonquin Park to Temagami and Solus, it's threatened by not just logging in the periphery of the park systems, but the threat from mines has been ongoing, mining patents in that area. It's unfortunate because politics does get involved in the wilderness of politics, or the politics of wilderness rather. Sort of dictates the temperature of what's going on, and our government leans towards industry at this point. So it's we have to pressure the government at this to maybe be a little more cognizant of what the people of Ontario would like to see as far as wilderness protection goes. It's a tough call at this point. Our group Earth Roots in Toronto have been working diligently to try to make a difference and to keep people aware of the certain areas, specific areas that are under threat. And it's tough during the pandemic because a lot of the activities that were involved in conservation and certainly activism have been tempered down because of the pandemic. So, we haven't gone to sleep, but we are still working in the, online mostly. We keep in touch with, our other directors and board members, and we do what we can do, but it's got to be the people of Ontario that speak out. So, letters, petitions, anything like that, that helps. So that's all I can say at this point. It's a tough call because of the politics of the province at this point.
Mm-hmm. I see my mods have, I've got some great moderators on the channel here, and I see them popping a few links in there. And one of the ones that Dan Schultz had popped in there was just a link to something as simple as signing a petition, strength in numbers, right? And what it'll do, who knows? But Friends of Temagami are trying to fight the good fight there and keep that whole Solus wildlands pristine, right? But I think they got their homework ahead of them. Really going to be a tough one. It's going to be a tough road with that one, I think.
Yeah, I think one of the historic problems with especially the canoeing fraternity is the fact that it's a bit of a fractured group. There's not a lot of cohesion, so we don't get the strength in numbers as they do in, say, United States or even in the UK. It'd be nice if we had a stronger provincial group or a national group of paddlers and or outdoor enthusiasts that that can leverage the sentiment of the majority of the people that want wilderness protection, and that's that's one of the weaknesses that needs to be mended, I think, certainly in the near future.
Yeah, for sure. Crazy. But like I said, I don't want to try and take this show too political. You know what I mean?
Dennis, come on.
Well, we could. Could.
No, I know. I agree. It's let's we can keep it light. I think that it's really tough because we could get into a long discussion about the politics going on in Canada.
Yeah, for sure. So let's try and change the topic a bit here. Hap, I wanted to know a little bit more about Hap. Like I said, what are your first memories as a wee Hap getting out for his first adventure in a canoe? How did you break into this whole love for the outdoors, doing what you do nowadays? How did this all start up?
I was petrified when my father would put me in a canoe, and I was petrified. I'd look over the gunnel and I'd see these weeds coming up from the bottom, thinking that there were spirits going to grab me and pull me under the water. So I had this great fear of water and great fear of the canoe until I was about maybe 7 or 8, and my father was making survival movies, believe it or not, for the Department of Lands and Forests. We had a cottage on Clear Lake up north of Peterborough in the Kawartha area, and on set were one particular First Nations fellow, and he was a master really, he was the epitome of a real bushcrafter, and he was working on the set. When he wasn't working on the set, he would take my brother and I out in the bush and teach us how to build a fire, boil water in a birch bark bowl that we would make, and canoeing skills, that type of thing. So I really saw the magic in movement and a consciousness that really awoke in me that spirit of adventure, for one thing, and the fact that there's a lot more to just surviving in nature, but actually living at peace in nature. And that's something that certainly through the next couple of decades I had to work through. It wasn't an easy situation back then, because there wasn't a lot of self-help books on the, there was 2 or 3 books in the library on wilderness survival, canoeing. It wasn't until the 1980s, really, that 80s, 90s, that flourished into such a huge market of not just transformation and an evolution of gear, but an evolution of the psychology behind what makes us tick in the outdoors, or what inspires us. Dave Foreman, the founder of Earth First United States, always maintained that there was a wilderness gene in some of us that is maybe a throwback to something back in historic days or prehistoric days, and it comes out almost involuntary, that it just it percolates through your youth, and there's something that triggers it. Maybe a hike, maybe a person. For me, it was a First Nations man that had very few words, but his gestures were magic to me. And so that was the simplicity of nature. It wasn't extravagant. It wasn't about the clothes that you wear. It wasn't about the equipment that you had, but it was an appreciation and a humility that was, I think that was the most important thing, that when you step outside the box, is that you humble yourself in the face of nature. And that's something that it took me a while to learn that, because, I am European. I have my roots that, we came to this country as basically as visitors, and we had to learn to do things the hard way. And that's the way I learned, really.
Really? Yeah, you and I talked yesterday when we were doing our test run for the show, and we actually talked about, we were discussing the evolution of, what you've seen come along through the years of gear. And nowadays, everybody is so relying on their gear, and it's got to be specific kind of stuff. Whereas back, you say, when you first started all this stuff there, your dad taught you to boil water in a birch bark bowl and things like that, right? These are a lot of these things are forgotten arts or skills. And what's your take on the new gear versus, even within the last 20 years, say, for instance? Yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, we used to go down to Hercules on Yonge Street in Toronto and buy army fatigues for $2.50. We could buy a whole camping outfit for under $50. That was a 2-pole pitch canvas tent that didn't keep out the black flies or mosquitoes. But that's what we had. We didn't have any ground pads. We cut spruce boughs for bedding. And back in the days when you're on a portage, you had a cedar canvas canoe over your head with you're carrying a pack and maybe an axe in one hand to clear portages. And you'd pass somebody on a portage also carrying a canoe, and then you'd stop and you'd chat about the weather, what was the fishing like upriver, and that sort of thing. And I was at a campsite, and on the end of a portage, and somebody came by, and they immediately, they didn't say hello or anything. They came up and they said, "Can I see your shirt? Can I see? Is that a certain label?" And I said, "Well, no, it's just a bush shirt." And I just thought that was rather funny, because the times have changed, that it's not what it's not what you see. It's what you wear. I think there's a narcissism attached to the outdoors now, which, as you can see, I'm khaki green and I'm kind of blending back into the background, but that's what it was like. Everything was khaki or tan and blended with nature. Today, it's you buy the brightest clothes you can and all these gadgets and all, that's why I don't have any sponsors, by the way, Dennis. We're us traditional guys are still carrying the heavy canvas canoes and dressing like I do, but not to say that I've been guiding for 50 years and I've had to change my ways. I've had to modernize what I do. Not saying that all the new gadgets are bad. You got yourself into trouble, prior to 1995. We didn't have GPS until 1995, and you got yourself into trouble. You can't get on the phone and say, hey, my scotch has run out or the toilet paper's run out. Can you get a float plane in to send it in? Or this guy that's on the trip is an idiot. Can you get him out of here? Or if somebody's sick or injured, you had to solve these problems without the technology to get you out of the situation. So it's, I appreciate the modernization of the outdoor camping gear immensely. I think we do get carried away a little bit. We depend a little bit too much on technology instead of the skills that it takes. Interesting fact that Temagami, when I was a ranger, we had a strict policy of not putting signs up because it was a wilderness park, right. And part of the skill was pathfinding. And I was all of the portage markings were either old axe blazes or rock cairns, and that was easily that would easily signify that there was a portage trail there. People forget that was the traditional way of marking portages, not by signs, not by flagging tape, not by any other means, but by the traditional means. And it was and this was carried on through my tenure as a park ranger. And every park is interesting. Every park, every wilderness park in this province has a different set of guidelines for signage. So, but just getting back to the point that people have sort of lost that skill for, we expect the man sign, wherever we go. We paddle in the parks and there's signs up. So we expect a sign at a campsite, a sign at a portage, a sign where to put your garbage, et cetera, where to park.
Where the outhouse is, yeah.
Exactly, where the privy is. It's very important, this. Yeah. So yeah, things have changed. The evolution of the gear thing, and certainly some things have improved. Tents, shelter, looking after the primal needs for survival have greatly improved. Just the invention of dry suits, wetsuits for cold water paddling, essential. A lot of canoe deaths had previously happened before the sat phone, the dry suit, that kind of thing, and especially in northern waters where it never warm. The temperature of the water is barely above freezing. So we've got excellent gear, but we've still got to maintain our vigilance as far as two things really: the humility that's required, the flexibility, because nature calls the shots, mm-hmm. and not to rely on the equipment so much, and learn those basic skills of navigation and just survival. Really, there's a simplicity to it, but a necessity to it as well.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I remember back my first canoe trip. It was up in the Temagami region, and I happened to be we traveled up this river, and I won't even mention the area because it's an area that I frequent. I don't like to give away my secret spots, but it's not a big secret because I did a YouTube video on it. But no, we traveled up this river, and we were trying to find a portage up to the next area, and there are obviously no signs back when I started either. And when we were actually blazing like through the bush, we actually come across when I looked down and I seen like, the rock cairn, like 3 rocks piled in a row, big to or large to small. I go, that looks like an awful lot like a cairn you would like, what I learned back in Boy Scouts, right? Mm-hmm. And we continued on a bit more, and I found another one, and sure enough, it marked the actual portage trail. And as just my wilderness skills from back in Cub Scouts, right? I actually figured that out. So it was pretty cool to come across something like that.
Yeah, the map reading is an art to itself, and then we used to depend on the 1 to 50,000 topographic maps, which actually, by the way, wasn't they were never intended for recreational paddling. I've written extensively on the problems with relying on topo maps, but there's a case in point when I was doing the Seal River in northern Manitoba. When you hit the tidal waters, we had to wait 3 hours for the tide to come in at the last rapid just to hit it at the right time, and to make it up to a shack where where we're safe from polar bears. And the next day, I saw this group come in way out on the tidal flats. Mm-hmm. And they were all drying out their gear, and they were in a pretty sad state. And I said, "What's the problem?" Well, we all dumped on Death Rapids. Well, how'd that happen? Well, I was looking at my GPS, and then they're looking at a screen that's about that big, trying to read the rapids and the location, and they actually got pulled down to this one fairly terrific rapids that descends into Hudson Bay. And they all dumped, and it was a pretty serious dump. And just to show the dangers of depending on a 2-inch screen, because you're taking your eye off the off the visual references, and that is a real. I think that's a real problem with navigating today. Is that we do rely more on GPS coordinates and not enough on looking at a 2-dimensional map and relating that to a 3-dimensional reality. So that's it becomes a problem. People have come to me and they'll say, "Well, you have a portage marked in your book here, but it wasn't there." And I knew it was there, and they say, "Well, no, I was right there," and I no, and but people have lost that ability to read. And understand where exactly they are if they don't have a GPS and are trying to use a topo map without that skill. They could easily get turned around.
Sure. Yeah. It's the old time skills. Sometimes I wish my grandpappy was still around, because some of the stuff that he could have probably taught me. Because he was like the old Frenchman. Backcountry kind of guy, right? And unfortunately, he passed away much too early. So that's crazy. Take a couple questions here from the chat. Let's see here. We got Johnny and Colleen from Keel Quest asking, is there an heirloom piece of gear you inherited and still use? Or do you have a favorite piece of gear that like Hap doesn't go anywhere without?
Yeah, I think I'm the heirloom.
Oh, come on. You look pretty good for 48 years old.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Wow. We're hard on equipment because we put a lot of miles on everything from canoes to paddles to packs. I can't say that I have one item that's lasted, because I'm like everybody else. I lose things as well. I think I've lost more knives on portages, where I've stopped to, peel something or cut something, stuck the knife in a log, and then paddled off. I think that's happened to a lot of us. And a favorite knife. I always think, I find a really nice knife, and I say, I'm going to keep this one, and it never happens. And or it's in a pocket in the pack or something, and it flips out. I can't. You know what? I'd have to think about that. But I can't say that I have. I do have a canoe that's hanging in the rafters in my barn. that I'm very fond of. It doesn't have a skin on it at this time, but Andrea learned how to paddle in that canoe, and it was I did put miles on that one years ago, and that's retired as a canoe at Cabin Falls is sitting there, and we did a heinous thing to that. We cut the canoe in half after a beaver had chewed the heck out of the gunnels. So we cut it in half and made a shelf on our deck. It's kind of where we put our wine and wine glasses
right
in the afternoon. And for a canoe builder to see a canoe, cedar canvas, a beautiful cedar canvas canoe cut in half, that's that's a real travesty.
Yeah, he's thinking he should be reskinning that thing, right? Yeah.
Well, good question though to think about one item that but we were so hard on equipment. Things just don't last for us.
Yeah. I've seen one question up there. I'm not going to go searching for it, but it's stuck in my head because me being a fond lover of the Temagami region, and obviously you really having a love for that area. The other guy in the canoe was asking about for somebody coming to Temagami region for the first time, what would you suggest as a good first time route in Temagami?
Well, it's interesting because I think paddlers are becoming a little bit softer in the last few years. I think they tend to look for places that are easy to get to, which is a problem in Temagami. Temagami, you actually need to get into the interior areas. You need at least 10 days to do a circle loop. Initially, I always suggest people to come in more in the off season, like the last week in August into September. The canoe camps have pretty much disbanded by third week in October or August, and water temperature is still warm. The traffic's down. The cottagers sail on the big lakes. Lake Temagami is a busy lake, although there's no shoreline development, and you can get lost on Lake Temagami easily. Mm-hmm. Still, we have to deal with houseboats, motorboats, fishing boats, all that kind of stuff. There are several routes in Temagami. We referred to my Temagami canoe route book, and
third one I've had.
There's the original right there.
Okay, let's talk about the original. Okay. So you're telling me an interesting story about this one here. That's the first version of the Temagami canoe routes. This is a more modern version of it.
Yeah, but we like to show this one. That's even a more modern version of that book.
Is that the newest version that's out?
That's the newest version, yes.
There you go, Mark. You're gonna have to pick yourself up one of these because I'll tell you, this here was my Bible in my early years of canoeing. Actually, I still got routes in here, Mark, that I want to redo because there's many of these routes are beautiful. So yeah.
Yeah.
So when did the original publication of this come out, Hap?
Well, I can't tell you that.
Well, you can tell me.
Well, when did the
People
first
have to pay attention, right?
When did the first? Yeah, I can't tell you that. Isn't that a question?
It is.
Yeah.
But now we've ruined the surprise.
Oh, we did, didn't we?
No, seriously. When did the first edition of that come
out? First edition came out in It was actually printed 77. Came out in 78.
So 1978. And you were telling me like it was done through or distributed through the Ontario government, correct?
Yes, that's right.
For how much? I couldn't believe this.
Well, it cost them $2 each to print, and then they would mail them out to inquiries for $2. So, they were losing money on the prospect. So they actually gave me the publication rights to the book after that. So we don't want it, but it sold. The first 5,000 copies sold out first year, and we had to print another batch that next year. So,
my goodness.
And it's still my best-selling guidebook.
Yeah,
believe it or not, and which is great. It's I think, and for any of those projects that I do, the guidebooks, I put a lot of years and effort into into the design and the research is it's pretty in depth when it comes to the geophysicality of the root systems, the First Nations certainly the traditional lands. And Temagami uniquely mirrors the Nadaki Manan, the homeland territories of the Temagami Anishinaabe people. And that's what really makes the Temagami paddling area unique. And again, that is the First Nations prehistory, and the fact that these routes that we paddle and we walk on the portages have been used for over more than 5,000 years. And so when you see areas being threatened by industry, it sort of raises a red flag. And a lot of only 10% of Temagami, for example, have been researched and mapped for archaeological findings. So there's 90% unknown out there in that territory, which most of that is under industrial permitting. So that's that's a threat right there. You take a lake like Lady Evelyn Lake, which is one of the larger lakes in Temagami. It was flooded twice to create a dam. First to be able to take logs, timber out, and secondly as a reservoir for the Lower Notch Dam on the Montreal River. And that lake was flooded without any regard for the archaeology of the Lady Evelyn Lake area. There was pictographs and burial sites, community sites, all under 30 feet of water now. And up until the 1960s, the natives, the local indigenous population were told that they had no right to the land. So you can understand the passion that's gone in behind land right issues and the use of the shared use of the land. So, but that all goes into my books, and that's one thing that exploration. The definition of exploration is you're a conduit of the people, and I think that's one face of adventure that's changed a lot, is the fact that exploration is being that term is being manipulated into other feats of endurance, and with the absence of really any kind of ecological or ecological pith or importance. So, and I think that's a danger to where we may be heading with modern canoeing, is that we sometimes want to travel too fast, too far, without really taking the time to look at where we're going or where we've been, and how we're doing it. And for me, I've paddled rivers dozens of times. I'm not a collector. I don't just do I'm going to do all of the big rivers in Canada kind of thing. I've done the Des Moines probably 20 times, even the Lady Evelyn probably 150 times, at least 150 times. My favorite rivers I've done time and time again, because every time you do one route, you see something else. And for people who want to paddle a specific loop, do it in the opposite direction. You'll see a whole different territory. And there's always finding something different, and I think that's what makes paddling in the outdoors important and exceptional for myself, and I think my family. I like to speak for them, and that is to actually don't look at paddling as a feat or a survival outing, but to actually live comfortably with that humility to live with the variables of nature, because they're always changing. We can't change nature, but we have to adapt to its vagaries, and that that's it's a comfort zone. It's a comfort zone for me because that changed the whole aspect of outdoor living from survival, to something that that's much more.
Sure. When you get into rehashing a book, like when you're going to be doing another publication, like you mentioned that the book you showed there, which was the newest edition of the Temagami book, what edition is that one?
I think it's maybe the 12th edition, I think.
Well, so you have a lot of detailed maps in there that have all been hand drawn, right? Now we all know that nature will reroute rivers and stuff like that. How do you keep up to date on all that stuff? Because you have many books out there. Another one right off the top of my head is your Mizunami book, which has a lot of river detail in it as well. How do you keep up to date on that?
Well, I wait for I get feedback from my books, and
Right.
and I have to say that inaccuracies I may have gotten, I can count on one hand, for comments about portages that weren't there, I even went on the blood vein. Somebody was saying, well, that's not your map was wrong. So I actually did the blood vein river again in Manitoba just to check that out, and I wasn't wrong. And so yeah, I typically go over and over a route and different times of the year. I mean, if I'm assessing rapids, for example, running channels, that kind of thing. Interesting though is that the complaints that I did get for missing portages or portages that have been changed always involves beaver activity in low-lying areas. So
Yeah.
I have no control over the beaver population, and if a beaver floods a low area, and often the portage is flooded out, so people start walking in another. They'll eventually find their way around. And that's happened in the past. I know 2 or 3 occasions where that's happened in Temagami. And but that's just the nature of nature, and that's something that. And if I get the next printing of a book, I'll make sure that gets put into the new edition.
Right.
And
that's cool. So you've got 14 publications under your belt to this point. Are you doing any writing right now?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, hold on a second. That's just a paper design that I did for my new book. It's kind of cut off in the top there. The Long Walk Home novel, and it's a novel. It's actually a fictional novel. I'm not going to say much about it, but hopefully it'll be out come spring or early summer. I'm still doing the edit on it, and I'll send it out to associate writers and get some peer reviews on that. I think I'm excited about it. It's been I've been working on that one for almost 20 years now with the research and the science. I had to actually, because there's politics involved, I had to wait until the American election was over to see who actually won the election. And
all you got to do is put that hat on. That's all.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, I'm always writing. I'm always doing my art as well. I'm working on a book for an associate writer paddler on the Stikine River, which has been under the magnifying glass of a lot of environment agencies because of the mining and the power boats in the lower section and dam the dams and that kind of thing. So that's I believe that's an environmental book coming out sometime this year as well.
Mm-hmm. Now you had mentioned earlier there that you've done the Des Moines River like a bunch of times, and Lady Evelyn, like in the hundreds. Do you have a canoe route or a river that stands out as Hap Wilson says, this is my favorite? Is there something that's just jumps out at you?
Well, I do have a bias, towards the Lady Evelyn because I've done it so many times, and that's where our eco lodge is, and And it has a great prehistory and just a wildness to it. That's certainly one. I try not to have favorites because every place that I've been has a special quality to it, and I do really like the northern Manitoba landscape. A couple of years ago we mapped out the North Seal River, and to incorporate with our the information that we did on the Lower Seal, and currently working with the Dene people of Tuduli, northern Manitoba, for the creation of their tribal park, which I think is very important. It's a new concept in Canada, as a matter of fact, and it is one of my favorite areas. And I think Andrea and I have paddled through that tree line esker country, and it's exceptional, not just for paddling and whitewater wildlife. It's also for the rich First Nations history. And I think that's very important when, for myself, it has to have, it's not the distance, it's the, for us, it's, what happens, almost inch by inch, of that river, that environment, that history. And I think that's what brings me back again and again to a specific river, because you always miss something. There's always something that pops out, or even the same scenery but under different lighting, or so as far as a favorite goes, I can't really. There's so many favorites of mine, and I've done. I've got another book project on the go, 50 years, 100 rivers. And, I could talk about each river that I've done. And again, I feel a little bit shy about talking about, my own personal exploits as something of great feats, because it's just my nature. It's what I've chosen, my lifestyle, to the path that I'm following. And then, any of the highlights, any of the notoriety that I get is incidental and appreciated by myself. But again,
you're not doing it for that notoriety, basically.
Well, I'm not doing it. I don't do it for sponsor. I don't do it to monetize. My Facebook. I've got maybe 3 or 4 things on YouTube. I'm really deficient when it comes to branding myself. We've only started really working our social media, I guess in the last year and a half. And man, it's, I have, my publishers really push the social media stuff now. And I fought against it for a long time, but it's something that I really have to do. But I like to think of myself as a humble person. I don't, even this show, I have to admit that I don't do a lot of video, or on air stuff, but but again, I like the fact that I can get a certain message out to people who are really taking to the outdoors, especially people for the first time. Is that there's a whole different portal out there. It's not just the gear that you buy in the places that you aspire to collect or go to. There's way more to that feeds the psyche and that embellishes your own personality when you can accept the all of the nuances that come with exploration, personal exploration of your own abilities, as well, what you're capable of doing, if you take your time. And anyway, that's
makes sense. Makes sense. Let's grab a few more questions here from the chat, and then we're going to do our swag giveaway around, or set that up around 8 o'clock-ish. So that's a little 5 minutes from now. And then I want to get into something, a a little more. I won't call it fun because you won't think it's fun because it's about you and it's things that have happened to you on adventures. So we'll just leave it at that. Louis DeBosca's asked, what's the nature of your relationship with First Nations in the area?
Well, which area? Now we live in Muskoka, I've had interesting relations with the First Nations here. I'm not going to go into that, but Temagami, longer relation with. I used to know, the chief Gary Potts, who was well spoken back in the days of the blockades, and all the activity going on with the environment. And I've had a long-standing friendship with one of the elders living off the reserve, Alex Matthias Cisquedo, who he believes that I'm his warrior brother from another life. He said, it's too bad you were born white this time, but you're really you really have Indian blood in you. And he's not afraid to say the word Indian. He said, I don't know why they I don't mind being called Indian. It's tougher to tread that fine line right now with nomenclature. It's changing by the day almost. But he he called me up and he said, look, I've had several dreams about you. This is when we knew of each other, but we never met. This was years ago. And he said, I've had several dreams about you. And we were warriors together in a past life. And I said, oh, really? When a man calls me up and says he's been dreaming about me, I start to wonder a little bit. And so I went down, talked with him, and met him at the Warrior Games, actually, that were taking place. Paddled a canoe together and struck a friendship. He said, "Your real name is Mahingan Wibada, which means wolf tooth." And so it was a great honor to receive that, that Indian name, and that was my association with the the spirit of the Temagami and Anishinaabe people in Temagami. I haven't had a lot to do with the band itself. But and it's gone through some changes as well, as a lot of First Nations bands have gone through changes over the last 100 years or so, and certainly getting the momentum to fight for their traditional lands, which I think is certainly acceptable, looking at our history together. And but my relationship has it's really hard to say what I don't even know what my relationship with the current band is. I think it's pretty good. I know I got into some arguments with the past chief because he was his background was in mining, and of course that's one. And when it comes down to the use of the environment, I think, or our resources, it all has to be sustainably managed, and industry has to be accountable. Whether it's the Georgia Pacific, from the states, or whether it's the Temagami Anishinaabe First Nations people, they all have to be accept the fact that it has to be maintained on a sustainable basis. So we're all subject to the same rules and regulations. And as an environmentalist, we sometimes we get people think that we're apocalypticists, which is a tough word to say in itself. But say that word fast 3 times.
I'm not even going to attempt it. I trip over my tongue all the time.
So, but we're not harbingers of evils and dark days to come. We always try. We're not against logging. We're trying to encourage responsible management.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Let's we'll get a couple more things here on screen. Maureen Fisher, who is Hap's books have saved our lives many times over 20 years by his books. Ask him about how he feels about the contribution to keeping guys safe and alive.
Well, I think that really I took an interest in really in the importance of guidebooks, and it wasn't to my most important thing was to write guidebooks as an environmental tool to make people aware of the importance of watersheds and First Nations and all that. Andrea and I paddled over the body of a paddler on the Missinaibi years ago. My first trip down the Missinaibi, we were looking at it as a river to start taking groups down. We didn't know that the paddler had died a few days before, and the first responders were there. The search and rescue people had just landed, and we later learned that it was a paddler that had gone down there, and his body had been stuck in the rapids for several days. And I started researching all of the deaths on the Missinaibi River, and then started looking at the topo maps, and then charted the river using my own notes, and noticed that there were at least almost 24 mistakes on the topographic maps that were misleading or inaccurate. And that led me to actually took me to the coroner's office in Toronto when I was doing the Missinaibi book, and it was a real eye opener as to the trouble that people could get into if they relied solely on the Canadian topographic map series. Interesting, with the Missinaibi, which was and is a waterway provincial park and a heritage river. At the same time, the Ontario government were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on advertising, trying to get people to paddle from Lake Superior to James Bay on this magical waterway. And an average of 2 people were dying every year on that river until the guidebook came out. I actually found the camera of 2 guys that had drowned at Thunderhouse. Thunderhouse took the lives of 5 paddlers because the cartographer, at a time when Ontario Hydro wanted to build a dam at Thunderhouse, which is a sacred site, and it was on a white print, and the cartographer arbitrarily marked the portage on a white print map in a purple line on the opposite side of the river where you can't really get to. A very dangerous place to get to, and it lured paddlers down to a very dangerous place. Obviously, 5 people went over the falls and died. Many more had gone over the falls by accident and survived. That's when it hit the front page of the Toronto Star with my research, and so the government at that time was reluctant to until that newspaper headline came out. The Ontario government refused to help fund my mapping project. And then after the article came out, mainly to embarrass the government into doing something, really, that a lot of these projects that I do, I fund myself. So it's not like I get a lot of sponsors. And so the article came out, and I got a call from the Minister of Natural Resources in Peterborough. He said, we gotta meet. So I went to his office, and he said, Hap, he said, you're a real troublemaker, and he was sitting back in his chair like that. And he pushed an envelope towards me. It was a check for $10,000. He says, put this towards you. It was almost hush money. So put this towards your research of the Missinaibi book. And so I think that was I think one of my greatest achievements, as far as what the last question was implying, saving the lives of people. And I think that was important, that in the fact that people can't rely on the topographic system of maps. And I've written about that in my other books. Why the topographic maps should only be used as reference only, and not taken, especially in some of the more remote areas. A lot of the maps above the wilderness line, which is the north part of Canada, where a lot of these trips take place, haven't been updated for 50 years or more, and they're only updated if a province wants to build a hydro dam or something. So a lot of inaccuracies on these charts for navigation purposes. So you really have to have your wits together. You have to know that if it's marked as a falls on a map, it might not be. It might be a rapid, or a rapid might not even be there, or a falls might not even be marked on the map. So.
Sorry, Sorry, nobody could hear me there. I was ready to sneeze. I turned off my microphone. I forgot to turn it back on. Anyways, so with all that being said, with all the research you've done, you must have had a lot of mishaps. And we'll get into that after we do our swag giveaway. But I do have one quick comment that I want to post here. And where did it go? Oh, from Fram Engineer was asking, can you talk a bit about your art and how you evolved your style? Now, all your publications come with some really cool artwork that obviously you do when you have off time or whatever. I'm proud to say that I have, and now Hap had to take a step back when I first met Hap at the Toronto Outdoor Adventure Show a couple of years ago, because I go up to him, I go, hey, I have your artwork on my body. I have one tattoo, and it's actually a piece of Hap's artwork. And he goes, just for the record, he says, I didn't put that tattoo there. So. But anyways, that's when my daughter told me, she says, Dad, stop fangirling. Because like I say, Hap's always been an inspiration to me. And it was almost like meeting Elvis the first time I met you, sir. Yeah. So.
Well, that's the first tattoo that I know that have been taken from my artwork. But my lawyer will be in touch with you, Dennis.
That's okay. Well, I didn't draw it on me either. The tattoo artist did. I'll just show it. It was actually a piece of this part of this work here. You got like the sun with the howling wolf and the jack pines, and then there's a little canoe on there. That's
I think the readers really want to see the real tattoo.
Well, I'd have to take all my clothes off. I think I have shown it once before. I think our good friend in the chat there, Mr. Cal. And you know what? It's actually faded. I actually have to get it all touched up because it's starting to fade. I don't hold ink well, and I'm not a tattoo guy, but I always said if I had any tattoos, it has to be something that I'm passionate about. And this whole canoeing thing is my passion. So that's the only thing that has any meaning to me that I would put on my body, right? So that's cool. So anyways, I just had to get that out there. So with that question being said by Fram Engineer, how has your artwork developed? Is that something like, you're sitting by at the camp one day and just started doodling, or?
No, I started drawing when I was 5 or 6 years old, and I was spending all my time doodling and drawing and coloring. And I won a couple of contests when I was a kid, Kellogg's, and I won a Bell telephone ad contest when I was in high school. And it just slowly evolved. I really enjoy the pen and ink. I find it difficult. I could do a color piece. I could work in acrylics or oils or I really like watercolors, but I almost find that they're cheating. And it's interesting that the black and white drawings don't have the same. They're not vaulted as high as, say, black and white photography, which is unfortunate. But a lot of the group of 7, for example, started as illustrators, and black and white art was used a lot in catalog drawing and that. And I actually gave up a job offer from Simpsons in Toronto when I finished high school as a catalog artist, and I'm kind of glad I did. I sat across from the employer, and he says, "We'll offer you, 5-6 days a week. We have an office to work in, and the pay was extraordinary for 1970, 71." And I said, "Well, when am I going to find time to paddle?" So obviously the employer is going to say, "Well, I don't think this guy's going to work out at all." So, I gave up that, and I was just freelancing for years. I was actually doing quite well. I was living in a renovated chicken shack north of Toronto. I would do drawings for bar mitzvahs. I had a friend who was in the printing business, and we'd do hasty notes and greeting cards for Black Creek Pioneer Village, Hudson's Bay Company, and other card companies. And that would get me through the winter, so I could grub stake 6 months paddling up in Temagami or Algonquin or wherever. And I did that for years, and actually lived off my art. So really, I'm an artist first, paddler second. Anything else comes after that.
Really, eh? Who'd have thunk that, eh? I would have thought just the thing. Okay, I got to show it off, Hap. People are asking in the chat.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna pull out the guns. Nobody laugh at the little chicken wings. Okay.
Good thing it's on your butt cheek there.
Like I say, it's actually quite faded, so it needs some touching up, right? Oop. Here, I'll actually drop that. There we go. Nope. Let's pull that away. There we go. So there it is. That's the artwork.
Well, and just from here, it looks like a smudge.
Yeah, well, that's what I say. It's actually been retouched one time, but there's obviously the sun, right, with the gull in there and the jack pines, and the artist did a really good job on it. It's just like I say, I don't hold ink well, but you know what? It's got its place in my heart, and I know what it is. That's the main thing. I know what it is. So thanks, Hap. I appreciate that. Keep up the good artwork.
I'm deeply flattered, Dennis.
Yeah, geez. So one day I'll have to get it signed, and then I can have that gone over again. But no, that's for another day. Anyways, let's get into our swag giveaway for tonight. We in our discussions there, we actually spilled the answers, which is what we like to do. I'm going to ask the question here in a moment. All I ask is that you please do not put the question or the answer in the chat on the left-hand side. What I need you all to do is actually send the answer to me by email, and I'll get that going across the bottom of the screen. You can send your email or your answers to coasprize@gmail.com by Saturday at 11. That'll give you lots of time to get your answer in. If you missed it, it gives you the opportunity to go back in the video at a later time and see if you can find it. It was probably around the half hour to 40-minute mark in there. So you want to check that out. And tonight's question is, what year was the first edition of Hap Wilson's Temagami Canoe Routes book published, and what was the price to purchase one? All right, so I'll repeat that one more time. What was the year? What was the first? What year was the first edition of Hap Wilson's Temagami Canoe Routes book published, and what was the price to purchase one? Send me your answer to coasprize@gmail.com, and I'm going to tell you what the prizes are for tonight. So we're actually going to give away 3 different things because Hap has something he's going to include with this, so I have to match the number or the quantity. So what I'm going to be giving is the usual stuff. We got Canoehound Outdoor Adventure Show pack with some patches and some decals. Our good friends over at Algonquin Outfitters have also given us a bunch of vouchers for free one-day rentals, $25 off $100 expenditure. I'm not sure. I can only give out one per package. I'm just picking at random, so whoever wins is going to get whatever ends up in the envelope, and of course some AO stickers. And then Hap has something he'd like to add as well.
Yeah, I got a couple of books. My latest book, Dance of the Dead Men, it's been getting really good reviews so far. River of Fire. It's a sizzling read according to the Winnipeg Free Press, and so I'll probably throw a couple of these books in. And
so you've got 3 books you're going to be given, or 2?
No, 3. We'll do 3 books.
Okay. So like I say, people, what you need to do is you need to answer that question by email at coasprize@gmail.com by Saturday at 11. At that time, I'll do a drawing. I will contact the winners and let them know and get their email or their mailing address, which I will use, and I will also share it with Hap so he can send out your signed book. So that's a great prize. Thank you very much, Hap.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Awesome. Okay. I can get rid of that. I'll leave the address going across the bottom in case anybody needs that. So earlier just a little while ago, I was mentioning that with all the things that you've done in this whole canoeing thing, right, throughout the years, I'm sure there's been a lot of misfortunate events that have happened. Can you tell us some stories about things that have happened to you? I remember reading somewhere like, polar bear encounters, frostbite issues, things of that sort. Anything you care to share?
Yeah, well, I mean, I spent a good 10 years homesteading on the Ottawa Valley while I was a park ranger, and it was bear country. Actually, it was the bear poaching capital of Canada, just north of Mattawa, and always had to deal with bears on the property. And I got to learn a lot about.
Excuse me.
Oh, sounds like COVID there. So I learned a lot about bear personalities, and having to deal with bears up on the property and homesteading it, and how to plant a garden, try to keep animals out. Just dealing with, with bear situations. Really, and it's interesting because they're, all the times I've spent out camping at different campsites and hundreds and hundreds of nights spent out, I've only ever once hung my pack by a rope to keep it out away from bears. So it's, there's always and I'm not going to get into the, my own personal technique. How do I bear proof a campsite? But bears, I've had a lot of bear, not confrontations, because confrontations can turn pretty ugly. But I've always had a lot of good dealings with bears. One bear in particular, I remember on and every bear species is different. Grizzlies are different from black bears, are different from polar bears, and polar bears are probably the most frightening, as most northern paddlers will tell you. And it was funny. I had a group of 8 going down the Caribou River, northern Manitoba, and we're getting close to Hudson Bay, and polar bears actually are moving farther inland now because of climate change. It's forcing them to feed further inland. So we have to start watching for polar bears early on, and they tend to like to kind of sit behind boulders so you can't see them. I know having lunch, we're having a shore lunch. I was making a fish chowder with some fresh caught fish, and everybody was kind of leisurely just sitting by the waiting for the soup pot and just relaxing. It was a tough river, tough rapids. And the river was maybe 150 feet wide at that point, 50 meters maybe. And I heard a shout, "Polar bear!" There was a polar bear. It looked like a big white boulder. It was just sitting there, and it stood up. And everybody went to grab their cameras. So that's kind of a natural thing. And it's across the river. Everybody thinks they're safe. But here's the third fastest land mammal on the planet here. And it can swim faster than 2 strong paddlers in a canoe. So, 150 feet is not very far when you're in polar bear country. So this polar bear kind of sniffed the air, and then everybody's taking pictures, along our shoreline. And then the bear started walking towards, the shore, the water, and then it got in the water and started swimming right towards us. And of course, everybody looks at me because I'm the guide. I do carry a shotgun. With a real magazine, with 2 magazines, one's Bear Scare and one's the actual cartridges, and which I'd never wanted to have to use. So, the whole, temperature of the whole dynamic of the group changed from happy photographers to, this polar bear swimming about 50 feet away. And so, everybody kind of backed up, put their cameras down, looked at me, and I, of course, I have to always remain stoic as a guide. I'm scared, of my wits as well. So I grabbed the shotgun. It's the only thing I could do. And the bear is swimming. All you can see is that nose going through the water, and at quite a speed, coming straight for us. And I got the gun, and I put the clip in, and that noise of the clip, being put into the gun, was enough to and cock the lever, and just the noise of that mechanics of the gun was enough for the bear to stop swimming towards us. And about 50 feet out, and he just turned around and went back, and then disappeared down the river. That's what made it even more exciting, because we had to run several rapids that day, and then everybody, I was in the lead canoe. Everybody would follow my lead down the rapids, and everybody was terrified that a bear would jump out at them at the end of the rapids, but nothing really happened. So that was my one polar bear experience in northern Manitoba. But I've had other experiences where the more time you spend out there, the more time something might happen. I've been hit by lightning once. That's also very unnerving. Not the ground, and my hearing has never been the same since. So it's and that was when I was mapping out the path of the paddle for the Trans-Canada Trail, Northwest Ontario. I've had some violent storms I've had to deal with and hunker down. Microbursts, which were basically, ground level tornadoes. A lot of those over the years, having to deal with that type of natural event was, there's a lot of things. The fire, I would have to say, Manitoba's fires, the River Fire book, for example. Paddling down the Seal River during the worst wildfires in Manitoba history, there's nothing that really prepares you for that kind of event, and certainly that far north, the timber is not marketable, so there's no rescue, there's no monitoring of canoe traffic on rivers in the far north. And also the fact that we didn't have a sat phone. There were no sat phones at that time. My first trip down the Seal. That's very frightening. Fire has to be one of the most frightening natural events in the wilderness that I think I've been a party to. I have to say one of the most frightening things that I had to do was I actually hand wrestled a bull moose in the rut season, but that was just down the road from my home here. Wow. In Muskoka. And I wrote about that in Trails and Tribulations. I think that was the book. That was my neighbor called, and the moose was in the backyard, and it was just running in circles, and it had its head tucked underneath the tarp of a boat, and it was pulling the boat across the lawn. And then my neighbor made two calls, one to me and then one to. I live right beside a wildlife sanctuary, and Tony he used to managing big animals, and she had called him. I arrived first, and I used my truck to kind of herd the moose down this laneway to the river, and turned around, came back. The moose followed me right back to the house again. So I parked, and Tony, who manages the sanctuary, he came on to the lawn, and we were looking at each other, and of course, he had just fed the cow moose that was in the sanctuary, in a private pen there. So he had the smell of the cow moose on him. And of course, it's in the rut season. So this bull moose, full rack, went over to Tony and started, sniffing Tony. He liked, the fact that he smelled like a cow moose. And then the bull moose turned at me, and I had my back against the garage, and the bull moose put his head down and then started coming at me like that. And all I could do was grab a hold of its antlers, and then we were kind of tugging and tossed. We were wrestling, and he was looking at me with his eyes, and I knew that he was just playing with me. And I was like, Tony, I'm not very comfortable here. So he said, well, I'm going to try something. So he started walking away, and it's about 1 kilometer through the bush to get back to the sanctuary. So he walked away, and the bull moose pulled away from me and almost put his nose on his shoulder and followed him the kilometer back to the sanctuary, and he walked it right into the pen with the cow moose. Wow. And my neighbor's looking out the window, thinking that we're both going to die in this situation. But I would never thought that I would ever be in that kind of situation where I actually had to hold on to the antlers and feel that strength of that animal. And, I'm not a weak person, but I was weak at that moment, thinking that he could just do anything that he wanted with me.
One head thrust like that, and he could probably send you flying,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, and he was a young moose, so it wasn't that big palmated. It was a lot of really sharp, pointed, points on that rack that he had.
Wow.
So yeah,
man.
How
many people in that chat over there could say they wrestled a bull moose in the rut?
Well, it's funny. You get into a group of paddlers, and they talk about, well, I had a chipmunk crawl into the jar of peanut butter, and then I had a raccoon get into my tent last night. And I'll say, I've got a story for you, kind of thing. I try not to go there because, people think, here comes another one of Hap Wilson's bullshit stories. So, but no, it actually happened, and I'm just glad I'm here to talk about it.
I'm glad you're here too. Jeez. So Hap, we've got a couple fellas in the basement here, just waiting for. I call it the basement, but I'll get them up in order. So gentlemen, just know that I see you, Bob and Mark. So I'll start with Bob because he was the first one here. Bob, welcome to the stream tonight. How you doing?
Very good, thanks. Thanks.
Hey, Bob.
Thanks for
Got a question for Hap?
Yeah, good to see you, Hap. I missed you this last year. Unfortunately, I couldn't go with the crowd with Jeff Dersh and company.
It's too bad, eh? Maybe this year.
Yeah, hopefully. Hell's Gate Portage. The worst portage you've done, or is there worse?
You talking about the worst portage?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's because it's clay based. It's if it rains the night before, or even it almost stays pretty slick, especially at the end. This is what you're talking about, right? Just after Thunderhouse Falls.
Yep.
And you're slogging through the first part. You're slogging through. You're knee deep in just water and mud, and then it levels out, and then it's a fairly decent campsite at the precipice. But then you have to deal with that drop down to the river at the end, and it's just like sliding down a snowbank.
Absolutely. Are there worse portages you've done?
There's a lot of words. Like Temagami's infamous for its difficult portages, and there's one portage that I find difficult, not just because I've had 2 replaced knees, but and a lot of arthritis. But there's a portage off Lady Evelyn into Dry Lake, and it's about half a kilometer, and it's where you have to step up and down larger steps than you're comfortable with constantly, and then you have to cross a creek that's sometimes in flood, and then across a boulder field. So that's one of the portages that I don't particularly like doing. I think I don't know. There's a lot of portages that I would say that are difficult, longer ones in particular. I know one south of Florence into Blue Sucker is not a particularly nice one either. Yeah, and whenever there's a portage, if I can line a canoe down, I'll line a canoe down, and
we've certainly adopted that practice a lot.
Yeah, that strategy rather than a long portage. You can play a rapid that way, line, and then hop over ledges and small falls that way. You can really, artfully get down a river without having to take the long portages. In a lot of cases.
Good, thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate you popping on. Hope you're enjoying the show tonight. Sorry, I just had to post this comment up here. Open air outdoors. I'd be terrified to smell like a cow moose. Not how I like getting moose meat. Sorry, bad sense of humor. Anyways, we're going to bring up our next guest. Thanks, Bob. I'm just going to close you down now.
See you, Bob.
Thanks very much.
Take care.
Next, we have Mark from the other guy in the canoe. How you doing tonight, Mark?
Not too bad.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, Hap. How's it going? Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, I'd just like to say Happy New Year's to both of you and everybody else on the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We look forward to this every week, so it's awesome to see an icon like Hap up here finally, and it's good to see. So anyway, I was just wondering. What's that?
I said I know how to pick them, eh?
No, you're doing good, Dennis. You're doing good.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I was just wondering, because I asked the question before about my first trip in Temagami. I've been car camping in Temagami at the Martin River, and I absolutely love the area. And I had mentioned a first loop, and I mean, me and my friends, we go hardcore in Algonquin. We've crossed lake after lake after lake in one day, kind of thing. And you mentioned something about people looking for an easier route, the newcomers looking for an easier route. With that kind of mindset, what do you think of all these newcomers? Like, I mean, I've only been doing this for 4 years, but every year I try and challenge myself to go harder and further and, you know, more hardcore, because I want to get out there where there's nothing. But what do you think of all these newcomers that are doing the YouTube channels and you know, getting into the backcountry camping? Because I know a lot of us have already dealt with, like, especially with the, you know, newer people coming to the park last year and having the parks completely packed all of a sudden, where like before we didn't see people for, you know, a week, you know, week and a half on end. Like, what do you think of the new people that are getting into this, like being, you know, such a veteran doing this?
I don't think I think it's great that people are wanting to get outdoors, but I think they have to remember a couple of things that you know, it's not a right that we have; it's a privilege to enjoy the outdoors, and I think there's an obligation to understand the land. I think the history, the prehistory of the land that we're paddling in, and remember that it's, you know, it's First Nations territory. They were there first, and I think without that respect, and I've seen that lack of respect in different places where pictograph sites have been, you know, scarred, and dolmen stones pushed over, and people just don't understand. They haven't taken the time to maybe research the routes that they're doing, or take the time to understand that there's more to it than just the distance. And canoeing, you know, shouldn't be a race. It should, you know, it should be something that you enjoy. And you know, I sometimes try to cover distance when I have to. You know, my wife and I race canoes on occasion, and that's, you know, we do, you know, it's nothing for us to, you know, for us to paddle 100 kilometers in a day. You know, we can do that, but, you know, it's not something that we do on our canoe trips. And you lose out on a lot of the benefits of paddling and camping, is if you're just there to do distance. And
well, see, we try and do distance just because we're obviously, you're starting at an access point where there's lots of people.
Yes.
We try and get as much distance as possible just to get away from everybody. So we have those moments where we're like, you know, it's like we're on the lake and it's just me and my companions, and, you know, we're like, okay, this is what it's about, you know?
Yeah, I understand that. And I think that's, I mean, I've done that myself, but I usually try to choose routes that aren't busy. You know, maybe to find a different time of season when there's fewer people, or a different access point.
Yeah.
But I understand that. You know, there's days when you have to work hard, and then there's days when you have to relax. And a lot of people don't build in off time when they're paddling. You know, and that's, you know, I have even when I'm taking out, you know, groups on canoe trips or longer expeditions, is that we have a system of where, you know, we have certain goals, certain campsites we want to get to. We always have a plan B and sometimes a plan C. And we break camp early because that's when you see wildlife, and that's when you have the most energy. Come 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, anytime after 3 o'clock, that's when people injure themselves. They get tired, they make mistakes, and that's when we stop running rapids. That's when we start looking at campsites, and we're usually able to get into a campsite before anybody else. I see people going by in the dark still looking for campsites.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's because they didn't map out their route properly. They pushed themselves. They didn't allow themselves enough time to, or else, you know, maybe they're late. They're on a tight schedule, or they have to get a shuttle ride out or a flight out or something.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps answer your question, but you know, slow down a little bit, paddle fast to get by those motorboats and houseboats, and then take your time.
Yeah, well, like I said, we've been trying to get out to Temagami for a couple of years now. Like I said, I've only been doing this for like four years, but like seeing, you know, places like Temagami, like in videos and whatnot, we've been wanting to get out there. It's just, I mean, from where I live, it's a very far drive to get out to, let's say, the Lady Evelyn. It's like a 10-hour drive. So you have like this day and a half that it's just travel. So, like I said, to me, like, I'd love to go out there. It's just a question of, like, I'm definitely going to check out one of your books because I'd love to I have a map downstairs to Temagami, and I'd love to see exactly where you've gone and see if, you know, something like that is like feasible for us to make a 10-hour drive all the way out there to do a loop or whatever, especially if a loop takes like 10 days, you know, like.
Well, it's tough because Algonquin Park, it's usually the average length of trip in Algonquin is 3 to 5 days. In Temagami, it's 7 to 10 days or more because of the distance that you have to paddle to get into the nicer areas, that, you know, in the deeper parts of the park. So it is tough. If you've got a 10-hour drive, I mean, you're using two full days of your vacation time just to get there and get back home. Yeah, that's, you know, choosing a route's really important. There's an art to it too, and to know where to avoid rumble lakes that we call motorboat lakes. And you know, there's ways of doing it. I usually get people to email me or call me, and they, you know, for route selection, and I can make some suggestions. I mean, even flying is an option, and to get into the deeper parts of the park, and away from all that, and then just, you know, using the prevailing winds and downstream travel to get back to the start point.
Yeah. Nice.
Cool. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you coming up.
Thanks, Mark.
And you know what? When you're ready to go to Temagami, yeah, I think you got my number, don't you?
Yeah. I think that's your number.
Look me up, man. Look me up.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy, we'll get our next guest up here on panel. Let's see here. We have Keith. He's the K and Kid.
I'm the K and Kid.
The K and Kid. Okay.
How
So
you doing, Keith?
Not bad. How you doing, Hap?
Good. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to change the topic a little bit. So, Hap, I noticed the last couple of falls you've been building boardwalks and bridges and some trails. How'd you get into that?
Well, it's funny. Back, I think 1980, I was a park ranger in Temagami, and I took my portage crew to Temagami Island because the logging companies wanted to log the island. Beautiful stands of old growth pine there. So we suggested to the Parks branch, well, let's go in and build a trail. So that was the first sustainable old growth pine forest trail built in the province. And I had my crew build a couple of loops around the north part of the island on Temagami Island. So that sort of kicked off the whole idea of sustainable trail building. I also built replaced a bridge that's been at Center Falls in Temagami for almost 100 years. And that bridge was taken down a few years back by the ministry because of liability. They didn't want to be liable if anybody fell off it. And it was built to last well into, even today would still be there if they didn't take it down, just replace a few of the boards. But building bridges, boardwalks, we did build several boardwalks during my tenure as a park ranger there as well. So that sort of grew into building that into a company in itself. When I finished with the ministry and toned down my outfitting business, that's something that we do in the spring and the fall. Now we build sustainable trails and enjoy that because they're hand sculpted and surgically built on private properties, and it helps people who have acreage that they can't get out to enjoy their property. We build a boardwalk and maybe a wildlife viewing station, and try to use materials on site. Say dead cedar used for some of the footings for the boardwalks that we use, for example. So yeah, no, thanks for asking about that. That's something that we do when we're not paddling or running our eco lodge, and we do that first thing in the spring, April, May, and this year we were lucky because it was a late fall. We were working on bridges and trails into December this year.
Yeah, that last set of pictures you sent were pretty cool. I noticed them on Facebook.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for following. Yeah, no, we have 3 sites on Facebook. One for Eco Trail Builders, and one for Cabin Falls, and then my own site. And but it's it's we love building trails. It's hard on our bodies. We're carrying heavy materials all the time, and it's something that we have to. We couldn't do it all season because of the hard work, and it's all using a lot of pickaxes and hand tools that we try not to use machines at all for our trail building.
Yeah, I noticed that this year you had that one trail you were building there, and you had that excavator in there. That's helpful.
Yeah, well, that was for the town of Penetanguishene, and they we won a bid for a trail job there, and it was and they said in the bid form a path or trail. So you think of a path or a trail as a traditional trail that might be 4 to 6 feet wide, but they say, oh no, the township wants it to be 3 meters, 9 feet wide. So, well, we're gonna have to bring an excavator in. We're gonna have to pull stumps. We're gonna have to cut more of the trees out of the way, unfortunately, and build up the surface of the trail. So we had to get an excavator in. We don't like using that's it's more of a footprint when you start making trails. A trail 9 feet wide, it becomes what we call a trode. It's not a trail and it's not a road, so it's a trode.
I've seen some cottage roads that are that wide.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll hope to see you in April, Hap, at the outdoor
show. We'll see if they allow that show to open. That's right.
Yeah.
We shall see.
We're all hoping.
Take care, Hap. Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks, Keith, for coming on.
You too.
Appreciate it.
You too, Keith. Take care.
Great night. And next up on the panel, we got DA Dakota. How you doing tonight?
Good. It's nice to see you, Dennis. Nice to see you, Hap. Happy New Year to both of you.
Thank you. Happy New Year's to you too.
Yeah, hopefully this year works out pretty good for getting outside. So
let's hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Hap, my question for you is when you did Path of the Paddle and you went up through Quetico and then headed up towards White Otter, how did the White Otter wilderness compare to Quetico?
That's one of my favorite areas. I think the White Otter Lake is one of the most beautiful on that whole stretch. And you obviously you've been there, right?
Not to White Otter, but I've been up through Quetico.
Yeah, it's not different, but it's just one of those quintessentially beautiful Canadian rock and pine and sandy beach lakes and crystal clear water. I can understand why they built the castle. On the northeast shore of that lake. It's so beautiful a spot.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen that castle yet, but I know. I think there's a description of Path of the Paddle at the Cache Bay Ranger Station off Saganaga Lake.
Yeah,
and I think did you do the artwork for that?
I did originally. Yeah, there was the I don't know what happened to the original artworks. I did a lot of the artwork originally for the Ontario Trans-Canada Trail people, but because of the bureaucracy and the problems ensued and the lack of funding, I actually quit with the Trans-Canada and went on my own to finish the mapping and the artwork. So they had a whole other series of maps that I did and artwork that didn't actually go into the final guidebook because I had to do it all over again for my publisher. So yeah, most likely, I don't know what happened to the art that I did, but it most likely got spread around. I know it got into the art gallery in Thunder Bay at one point.
That's all right. Yeah, that's all right. And yeah, there's some pretty detailed artwork that's at that ranger station, and so it's probably what you did for that. I would think so.
It could be. Yeah, it could be. I know I did a series of for the different sections of the Path of the Paddle. Pretty detailed work, and I had to do it all over again.
You did?
Well, they wouldn't let me use the original artwork for the final guidebook because I had quit the program.
Yeah, politics.
I know. Yeah, I don't do well with politics. as you may.
No, in fact, I'm coming in from the States, so yeah, a whole lot of politics going on.
Pretty exciting things happening down there tonight, tomorrow.
Oh yeah, I guess so. It's more of the same. Yeah, exactly.
More than your fair share of politics down there right now.
I showed this earlier. I thought maybe we can send some of these down.
That would be awesome. I told my wife about that. She got a good laugh out of that with that hat. That would be really great. Very cool.
Wow.
Yeah, very good. Well, thank you very much. It's nice talking to you guys, and I hope your year goes good for you.
Yeah, be safe down there.
You bet. Take care.
Appreciate you coming on. Before we bring on our next person up on panel, we had a question in the chat there that I thought was interesting. It goes back to Keith's question about the trail building and stuff. Do you have any books for trail building techniques or routes?
No, the IMBA, the International Mountain Biking Association, has the books on sustainable trail building, which are the best books put out. There's no sense in making duplicate copies of what's already out there. So just you can get all that through IMBA, and excellent guidebooks for sustainable trail building. That's what we use for our guidebooks.
I think Matt would probably know about that because I know he's an avid mountain biker as well. So there you go. Yeah. Matt Hahn, how you doing tonight, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Hey, Matt. Hey,
Hap. So,
what do you got?
Go ahead, Dennis.
I was just going to say, what do you got for Hap?
Well, Jessica and I, my girlfriend, we did our first trip this summer in Temagami, and man, it was like walking into a ring and getting beat up and going home and then being like, yeah, let's do it again, because it was so awesome. It was great. We started at Jarvis Landing, and then went up Ishpatina Ridge and like all the way around to Solis and then out kind of thing. So it was a 10-day trip that we did in 7 days.
That was your first trip to Temagami?
Yep.
Yeah, well, you didn't pick an easy one.
No. we did a lot of this and a lot of this and a lot of this.
Yeah, but those are the trips that you remember, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was nothing but pain, but at the same time, some of the most beautiful country we've ever seen. It was amazing. Like, we're definitely coming back in the coming summer.
So here's my question to you: are you a stronger couple now after that trip?
I think so. Yeah. I hope so. There were some moments where
you've seen his girlfriend. She was a trooper, man. She carried that canoe across every portage like a trooper, while Matt carried his little backpack.
It was 80 pounds. We chose I chose to take all the food and gear in one canoe pack. And that was kind of a mistake in part of my legs being like, why are you doing this to me? What's the purpose? But it was great. I mean, like, every portage we could just pick up the pack and go kind of thing. And then she just had the canoe and that was it. And it was less weight for her to carry. So she was happy. But Hap, I want to know one last trip you had to go on, and that was the last trip of your life. Where would you go, and what campsite would you stay at?
Ooh, I haven't been there yet, but yeah, I don't know. I know there's a couple of routes that I would like to do. I want to do the Upper Stickeen River for one, and maybe the Mountain River. But if I had one last kick at the can, I would probably go back to Lady Evelyn River. That's my home river, I would say. And I have some favorite campsites in Temagami that are exceptional as well. There's many, many good campsites there, but I'm not going to tell anybody where it is.
Smart.
You have to find it.
Now, you said early in the show that if you want to experience something different, do a route in reverse. How many times have you done Lady Evelyn in reverse, like going upstream?
As many times as I've gone down.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. And even at night.
Wow.
Well, you do a river 100 times and you get to know each rock and each rapid. And we can paddle from where we put in the 32 or 33 kilometers where we park the car to get down to our eco lodge with 14 obstructions, portages, rapids, whatever. And we've done it in as little as 4 hours. And it's just that we've done it so often. We know every rock. We run all the rapids, and that's like our commute. And going upstream, it certainly takes a little long. It takes us about 6 hours to get up. It's mostly, for the average person, it's a 2-day trip to go down, 2.5 day trip to go down. Because for the Lady Evelyn, it's a river you want to take your time at.
Right.
For us, it's like, that's a business that we run. So it's almost like I say, it's like our commute we park and then we paddle. And sometimes we were driving from Muskoka, which is a 5-hour drive to get to the landing. And then another, 4 or 5 hours paddling downstream. So it's a long day for us. But like I said earlier, I mean, the Lady Evelyn has, every time I go on that river, I see something different. And I think it's the same with every river that I've been on.
Yeah. The one regret that we had on our trip was we only did it we did it in 7 days, and just because of time constraints, we couldn't go longer. But if we could have, we would have maybe done like a travel day, rest, paddle around kind of thing. Because
you got to build in a rest day every 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
You can't not do that, because especially the hard routes are hard, and they're hard on you. And then you stop enjoying it as much. And that gives you time to explore and just to relax into the surroundings. So my suggestion is if you can build more time in, then do it. Or change your traveling schedule in the daytime, so you can build in sometimes in good weather, you paddle a little further so you can buy some time, and then take camp earlier. At least if you're not going to take a whole day, break camp early and then make camp early, and then have the extra time to sit and relax and rejuvenate, swim, fish.
And I think that's true. Yeah. I think that's something that Temagami has won up over most places is you book a park, you don't book a site, you don't book a lake kind of thing. So unless it's crown land kind of thing, but if you're in the Lady Evelyn Park kind of thing, you can stay anywhere. So if you're not feeling it that day, you can stay there, and you're not screwing anyone over kind of thing. You can go anywhere, and we felt that freedom. It was just so much nicer than being stuck like, oh, we got to get to the next lake on this night kind of thing, or else we're going to be in trouble. And I think that's a big reason why we want to go back, is because we want that freedom to go where we want, when we want, but still have designated campsites, so we're not kind of camping in the bush, like really camping in the bush kind of thing. We're not at that level yet. So yeah.
If there's one thing I've learned over the years, my buddies and I, we used to do our trips all the time. We take a 7-day trip and do it in 7 days, right? Now that we're getting a little older, we will take a 5-day trip and do it in 7 or 8 days, or a 4-day trip and do it in 7 or 8 days. And that gives you your rest days. Emergency days are a big one. We had last year on our one trip there, the one guy on the trip caught the corner of a branch and sliced himself open over here. This is up in Gogama. And the good thing was that it happened on our second day, the beginning of our second day, and it gave him the opportunity to be able to go up into Timmins to get stitched up and come back. And we use that day as a rest day, right? Our first layover day. So yeah, you got to kind of plan these things in there. Yeah. Enjoy it. Like Haps does. You got to enjoy it. It's not a race.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, once it's a race, you look past things and you look for the next portage, and you, as quickly as you can, you get there kind of thing. I remember when I first started paddling, it was it's still kind of it's a race against the dark for me. Get to camp at ASAP so you can get set up kind of thing. But
Yeah, maybe take a look at the way you're camping. Like say, you get up early, get on the water, and paddle 6 hours, and then take it easy for the rest of the afternoon.
Yeah.
You'll find that you'll make more distance that way. A lot of people take too much time in the morning to break camp, and then push it to the dark, our dark hours. So it's just, it's a good thing that we have long days in the summertime, but if you're traveling in the off season in the spring or the fall, the days are short. So,
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much, Matt. I appreciate you popping on.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Nice to meet you, Matt.
Around in the basement if you like.
We'll see you this year.
Yeah.
Cool. So we have nobody else down there with any questions. If anybody does want to pop up, feel free to click on that link, get maybe one or two more people up here. But if not, we're going to get ready to close things up. But I do have a little speed round of questions for you, Hap, that you can just sort of quick little answers just to pop up a few things. I hear dinging.
That's our old school clock we just got.
Oh, okay. So, Hap, favorite meal to cook at Cabin Falls?
We've got some new ones. I think Andrea brought in a Mexican dish, Mexican rice and black bean dish. The pizzas are really a hit at Cabin Falls as well.
Yeah, I had to ask that one because I seen on Facebook you had a post on there. I think it was
right.
Facebook where you had big pizzas on there. They look pretty delish. Do you prefer solo or tandem paddling?
I have to say both. I love paddling with my wife. Probably first and foremost, we've done a lot of trips together. We have this syncopation that even on rapids that I see her movement, so there's very little shouting. Sometimes I'll shout, and then she'll tell me to shut up, and which is kind of normal, But she's so good in the canoe that I just watch her movements, and so I love paddling, through different types of situations with her. Solo, I still like solo paddling. I've done a lot of solo paddling. And especially when I was working on my guidebooks, I did a lot of solo paddling. They're both so different. And I haven't done a lot of solo paddling in the past few years because I prefer paddling with Andrea. So I'd have to say tandem paddling. And the fact that you're sharing that experience with somebody else, and it's always, for me, it's a greater pleasure when you've got somebody to share it with.
All right. Okay. Regrets. What would you change?
I try not to think of my life as having any regrets at all.
That's a good thing.
No, I have no regret. Well, I have a couple of regrets I'm not going to talk about on air or bring up. But for generally, no, I have absolutely no regrets.
Okay. I see we got a couple more people in the basement. Fran Engineer, I see you were in and you popped out. Feel free to pop back in if you like. We do have two others in the basement here that I'd like to get up here. Maybe last questions before we get ready to close out the show. But a couple more speed rounders for you here. Accomplishments. What are you most proud of?
Well, I think what Andrea and I have built at Cabin Falls Eco Lodge, I think that has been a monumental project for us in the labor and the love, and I would have to say the work that we've both done to bring that to fruition. In my own personal work, I would have to say the Missinaba book, because after the book came out, there were no further deaths. In 1994, there have been no deaths on the Missinaba River because the guidebook is detailed enough. People are forewarned about what to expect. So
cool.
I'm very happy about that. Just the fact that the guidebook has been, I would like to think, instrumental in helping guide people down the river.
Sure. Okay. And because you inspire me, who inspires Hap Wilson?
What's funny?
Has inspired Hap Wilson.
It's funny you asked that because I've got a couple of people that I don't want anybody to forget. A mentor of mine, Kirk Whipper, if you can see that on there. I spent a lot of time with Kirk, and he was a great soul, and people would know him as the founder of the Canadian Canoeing Museum. Of course, he's been passed on now for several years. There's Bob Hunter, who is the co-founder of Greenpeace. We did probably maybe 12 different trips across Canada for environmental purposes. Bob's passed away now for a good while, but as the co-founder of Greenpeace, he certainly made his mark in the environmental world. And these people, I don't really have heroes, but I have mentors. I have people that my life has been really, I think, enriched by the people that I've met on the trail and that who have added to my own life, and so the wisdom that they were willing to share was very precious to me.
Mm-hmm. It's great. It's neat to know that everybody has an inspiration in their lives, right? So. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know those are a few. Okay, so we've got 3 people in the basement. We'll start with Christopher Morris here for a quick question. We'll get through these. And I know Hap wants to watch the Canada-US game tonight, the gold medal game. So, and that starts at about 9:30. So as long as we're done by 9:30, I guess we're good, right, Hap?
We're good. We're good.
Awesome. Christopher Morris, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm well, thank you. How are you guys doing?
Hey, Chris.
I'm great.
Hap, I spent the first half of my life in Quebec and Ontario, but now I live out in BC in Vancouver. And they're just, I love the mountains. I volunteer for a search and rescue team, and I spend a lot of time in the mountains, but there's just not as much opportunity for canoeing. Do you have any suggestions for out west?
I'm doing some map work for a book project on the Stikine River, and I noticed, it's got some of the most dramatic kayaking through the Grand Canyon section of the Stikine, the lower section, but the upper rivers, the upper Stikine, which is fairly easily accessed, is something on my own personal bucket list. But you might want to look into the logistics for doing the upper Stikine River. If you don't mind, it looks like you can Google map it and follow the river down and take a look at some of the rapids if that's something that you're interested in. I don't know if you want class 2, maybe class 3 rapids, but looks like a lot of fast flowing, maybe a lot of current, and spectacular scenery. That would be. I'm not that familiar with BC rivers at this point.
Yeah, I'm almost thinking it might be fun to just for historical reasons to follow the Thompson River or something like that. But it goes through so many towns. It's not really wilderness for a lot of it. Reading biographies of Thompson and people like that, it would be pretty cool to paddle the same water that they've been in.
Yeah, that's a start. I'm I apologize because I can't really help you in that matter. That's something that because I'm not that familiar with the BC waterways. That's and probably because the fact that it doesn't really lend itself as well as the central, even eastern provinces as far as paddling goes.
Yeah, and I'm paddling a 1952 cedar strip canoe, so it's a bit of a challenge.
Well, good luck with that. That's
yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the help.
Thanks, Christopher. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. Take care.
Great. And next we've got Nathan. How you doing, bud?
Hey.
Hi, Nathan. How you doing?
I think this is the first time you've been up on panel here, huh?
Yes, first time here.
Good to see you, man. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, first I want to say that I'm a huge fan of both of yours for different reasons. And I read almost all of Hap's books last year. So thank you to both of you for keeping me entertained lately. On to the question. I've been dying to get down the Lady Evelyn River and paddle past Hap's cabin there. However, I sprained my ankle a few years ago in Temagami, and I've been a bit frightened after hearing it was some of the worst portages in all of Canada, from a few others. So I often go solo, and while the ankle is feeling quite a bit better, I do worry that it might not be a good idea. So what do you think, Hap? Think I should pass, try to find someone else to go with me, or maybe take it off the bucket list for now?
I don't think so. And I think with the Lady Evelyn River, it's a river that you have to do slowly, especially if you're first time going down. Even other times, especially the portages are difficult around the waterfalls, not the upper section, but when you get past Catherine Lake, or what we call Divide Lake, where the two channels separate. The portages can be difficult. I mean, people have broken bones on those portages, but it's usually due because they're not packing properly. Their load is possibly it's an unbalanced pack on their back. The canoe is unwieldy. It's too heavy for them, or they're just tired in the afternoon. It's like I mentioned earlier, is that people try to push the push the trip into the dark, into the late afternoon, and it's like you stop running whitewater after 3 o'clock. And I would suggest, if you get down to the lower section where the portages are difficult, is that camp on Divide before you tackle either the north or the south channel. Take your time, wait for it, but maybe take a day's rest if it's crappy weather, and do that when it's not raining, because raining really adds a lot of the slickness to the rocks, and it can be dangerous.
Can you get through Fat Man's Portage maybe solo?
Well, yeah, there's two portages there. You don't have to take the squeeze through there. You can go around up by the campsite. If you have my guidebook, it'll show another portage that goes up. It's a little bit. I don't think it's in the old book.
My first time. Sorry.
That's what. Yeah, you might need one of the more recent copies. Yeah, I think it's been updated. So there's another portage marked. If you go up, instead of going through the squeeze, you go up into the campsite and then around, and then approach the portage past the squeeze. But you still have the rock tumble at the bottom to deal with. Or you can, I know people who have actually roped their canoe down the cliff. That the camp kids use that for diving cliffs. It's 30-foot cliff. I've heard of people lowering their stuff down there. I don't think that's feasible, but I don't find that portage that bad. But I've done it a few times, so I'm used to it.
Yeah, you're way more experienced. But okay, thanks. You might see me paddle by soon.
Yeah, don't give it.
Nate, maybe you and I will get over paddle. I've been wanting to do it too. So.
All right.
All good. Thanks, Nathan. Have a great night.
Have a good
We'll
night.
talk soon. Cheers. And last but not least, we have Fram Engineer. How you doing tonight?
Hey, not too bad. Thanks very much for having me and hosting me. Hey, Hap. Nice to see you again. Yeah. I just wanted to circle back to the trail question, the trail maintenance and trail development question, especially on the portage trails, where sometimes they're a bit boggy, a bit muddy, a bit slippery, and you sort of see, if I just go a bit more to the left or to the right and sort of carve. What is the real etiquette there in terms of sustainable portage trails? Because there's a science to it, right?
Traditionally, the First Nations actually laid logs down on portages like that, and even the early canoe rangers, back in the early part of the 1920s and into the 30s, when they used to patrol fires by canoe, they used to lay corduroy down along the swampy parts, and in places where they couldn't get highland away from the boggy sections.
So it's good etiquette then, if you see something rotten there, just cut a log and drop it in? Or?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of people just cut bramble and branches and things that kind of snag your feet when you go through there. So it's better not. It's better just to endure it. Make sure your laces are tight on your boots so the mud doesn't suck your boots down into.
But I was thinking of the people who come after us, as well. What is it? Good manners, really, to make the trail a little bit better. or are we doing more damage?
You'll find. I think you'll find on every boggy portage where people have tried to avoid it by going around it. So it's going to be natural that if it's particularly wet and it's saturated, when other times it may be dry, you're going to find people who have already gone around that section trying to avoid getting stuck into the mud.
Yeah. Okay.
As far as etiquette goes, I don't think there's nothing written. I mean, it's an unwritten code probably. I just don't like to see, people just haphazardly throwing brush and stuff across because it actually makes it worse.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was thinking about too. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Hap. I won't keep you from your game too much. We'll see you later on. Okay.
Take care.
Catch you. Right.
Thanks,
Thank you for hosting. Yeah, you too.
Awesome. You know what? Always some really interesting questions come out of the chat. I mentioned this week after week that I can write down all the stuff I need to on here, but it's the people that are over there in that chat that really keep the questions flowing, Hap. So it's been some good ones tonight.
Yeah, good questions for sure, and I just hope I answered them the way people wanted to.
I'm a happy camper. So we'll get ready to close this up, and then we'll have a little chat in the green room afterwards. But is there anything you'd like to leave everybody with? Something inspirational, something that And there is too. That's good. Keep calm and carry on. There you go. There's a happyism. Happyism? Is that the right way to put it?
Been a pleasure.
Yeah.
And
so
thanks for inviting me on the show.
Yeah. Have you got anything planned for the winter time really quickly?
No, you know what? I've got some injuries I've got to look after. So I'm mostly writing and doing some artwork. So we're pretty lucky where we live. We're in the country, so we have snowshoe trails and ski trails on our property and a skating pond. So that's now we have a pretty tight bubble here for the winter. So we're actually enjoying that. And I just hope other people find sanctuary. I think it's important for people to find sanctuary, even in their homes, just to find some space. Read books, pursue hobbies. I think that's what I think people have, we're going to have to do for another few months yet. So while this thing gets under control.
Excellent. Well, we'll leave it at that there. We got a couple people in the green room there that we'll have a little chat here after the show. So I see you down there, fellas. We're going to bring this to a close. Hap, thanks so much for spending your Tuesday evening with us. You know what? As usual, class act, and this has been an honor that you actually came on the show. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you. It's I'm very flattered to be here. Thanks for asking me, Dennis, and such great people that you had on the show here asking questions and that.
You're welcome back everybody. Anytime.
Okay.
To everybody in the chat, make sure you check out Hap's website there. You'll get a lot more information on Cabin Falls if that's something that might be on your radar. You get to learn a bit more about that. Check out his YouTube channel's not huge, but he's got some interesting things on there. He's got an Instagram page. He's got a Facebook page. So check those all out there. Stay up to date with Hap. If you haven't already done so tonight, please do hit that subscribe button. If you see the show is something that might be of value to you, you know what? Feel free to join us every week. We're live here every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Follow us on Facebook too, because when we do have those weeks off like we did last week, you'll know about that as well, so that you don't waste your evening by not being able to tune into something. Thanks to everybody that had come on and asked questions tonight live on panel. Greatly appreciate that. And everybody over in the chat over there, you guys are the best. My moderators, great job tonight. Thank you very much. And let's see here. That's about it. So until next time, I am Canoehound. And remember, people, keep the adventures alive. Have a great week. See you next week.